Hey guys, top afternoon to you. Richard Scouten, Three Mountain Horsemanship here. This is a new horse that we have in for training. A very nice little Arab. One thing that the owner told me was that the horse doesn't like to stand tied. It gets kind of claustrophobic and can pull back when this horse is tied. So one thing that I do before I tie him and before I start teaching them to stand tied, and you have to actually teach a horse to stand tied, is I ask them, kind of like in my putting the snaffle video on, I ask them to put their head down. So I just apply a little bit of pressure to that knot, ask them to lower their head, and that way they feel the pressure from the pole strap going up over their pole, and they learn to yield to it as opposed to react to it and fight it. So I just put my hand here, a little bit downward pressure. As soon as they give me that nose, then I let go. Or excuse me, as soon as they lower that head, I let go. So once they can lower that head and they're not reacting from the pole pressure up here, because that's what they feel when they're tied, is that pole pressure, and they pull back and that pressure gets tighter, they get more frantic and they fight and they strike and they paw, trying to get loose. So once I can do that, then I'll ask my horse to lower their head, keep their head low, and back up. So can they back up with that head low? Can they stop with that head low? A lot of times when you ask them to stop, they'll throw that head up. So I ask them to back up, head down, back up, stop, head down. And my goal is to either get that head to stay the same or even come down a little bit. Then I'll ask for that head down, see if I can't lead them forward a little bit, stop them, back them up, stop them, go forward, stop them. Good. I want her to feel that pressure of that halter, and I want to be able to move her head like a helium balloon. Anywhere I ask her to move that head, I want her to be real light and real giving and yielding. So, head down, stop, back up, put the head down, stop. So she's starting to yield from that pressure and starting to accept it as opposed to fighting it and thrashing when they're tied. Something that I see a lot is people use blocker ties. And there's nothing wrong with blocker ties. I have blocker ties in this round pen and down at the arena. But a lot of people say my horse won't stand tied, they pull back, so I'm using a blocker tie. And I'm going to show you how a lot of people use a blocker tie and why I don't like using blocker ties that way. So a lot of times when people are using blocker ties just like this, they use them because their horse pulls back. Well, what they do is they double their rope over like you're supposed to, they push it through the ring like they're supposed to, put the pin in and pull it back. Well, they leave it like that. Horse pulls back, yeah, they're not going to fight because the rope's going through. But if pressure motivates a horse and the release teaches, then we can pretty dang quickly teach our horses that when they pull, whew, they can go. And they can take that whole rope out of the blocker tie and they're gone. So if I'm using a blocker tie, I'll double up the rope. I'll push it through the ring, put the pin in, all the same, but then I'll take the tail of my rope and I'll put a few wraps around the rope attached to the horse's head so that when they're pulling, there's a little bit more friction on that rope so they can still drift. Okay, they feel the pressure, they get claustrophobic, they can still drift, and then they can just kind of slow down to a stop. So there has to be a brick wall that they can't run through. That brick wall is the halter. So if you add little wraps to the rope going to the horse, then it adds more friction as they're pulling back, and then as they're drifting backwards, they can slow down, slow down, slow down. As soon as they stop, the pressure gets released. The way I teach my horses to tie, and I usually use this top rail, maybe I'll use this one for the video, is I'll wrap my horses around these big rails. Horse that pulls back real hard, I might wrap once, okay? Little bit of pressure, but not enough to keep them trapped. Horse that pulls back a lot, I might wrap 2 or 3 times so they can still pull back, but there's a lot more pressure saying no, don't pull back. pressure's applied when they're pulling back, and that pressure's saying don't pull back, don't pull back, don't pull back, and then they stop, and they get an instant release when they stop. So the pressure motivates, the release teaches. So that's a little bit on tying horses. I don't know if you can tell in this video, but this horse is a little bit sweaty. So I'm working on tying after I've ridden this horse. So I pulled this horse out, a little bit amped up, a little bit fractious. I have to give them some kind of an incentive when they're standing here. So I'm not gonna take a fractious, amped up horse, tie him up, and just demand that they stand tied. I have to train that into them. So I'm gonna get them out here, I'm gonna ride them, I'm gonna work them. When they get kind of tired, then I'll tie them up. Then they're gonna start to associate being tied with rest and release. So train your horses to stand tied. If you're using the blocker tie, put it through there, wrap it around itself a couple of times so there's some resistance and they can't just zing that line out of there. And then if you have a hitching post, just put a few wraps around that hitching post. All right, thanks for watching. See you next time.